This Valentine's Day, celebrate the one you love the most with Hallmark cards at Walgreens. Valentine's Day is the best time to send your favorite person a reminder of just how much they mean to you. A Hallmark card is a super simple and beautiful way to say how grateful you are for the love you two share. Don't forget, Valentine's Day is Saturday, February 14th. Visit Walgreens today to find a Hallmark card that shows just how much you love them. Because love lives here.
Running a business means checking a lot of boxes.
Let's see. Payroll? Check. Inventory? Check. Insurance?
Good thing Simply Business makes getting small business insurance fast and easy. Check insurance off your list at simplybusiness.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Royals Rundown podcast. I am today's host, Jeremy Hokius Greco, and unfortunately Jacob couldn't join me today. He's busy with the day job, unfortunately. So we've got a pinch hitter here. We're looking for a ninth inning grand slam. It'll be Max Rieper, the editor of Royals Review. How you doing, Max?
I'm good. I'm ready to be the Adam Frazier of this podcast, to step in and provide some veteran presence and all the intangibles that it takes to make a successful pod.
All right. With me trying to figure out how to host this thing, that's absolutely going to be necessary. How far away is spring training again? It's less than a week, right? Or is it a week?
We should have footage of guys doing calisthenics in a matter of a week, I think, right?
Yeah.
'Cause early guys report early that are in the World Baseball Classic. So and we'll have baseball games. I mean, they're fake baseball games. We'll have baseball games played this month, which is awesome because I look out my window. It does not look like baseball weather at all right now.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and I checked my phone and I saw it felt like negative 13 degrees outside. And I said, baseball, please come soon.
Sure wish I was in Arizona.
Yeah. So, like you said, the World Baseball Classic is coming up. So let's just jump into, we're going to go out of order because I give you a list of topics and then I don't care about the order. We've got the World Baseball Classic is coming. Got some news about that. Guys over 37 aren't going to be allowed to participate this year because the WBC or some organization around them refuses to insure the contracts of anyone over 37. So if you're out there wondering why is Clayton Kershaw not among the guys listed who can't participate, it's because he doesn't have a contract to insure, as he's retired from Major League Baseball. What do you think about this, Max? Does it make sense? Does it ruin the WBC to prevent guys from 37 and up from participating?
Yeah, and I guess the Puerto Rican team has had most of their roster ineligible because they can't get insured, and they've threatened to not participate, which would really throw a wrench into the tournament because they're supposed to host one of the pools. So that would be a pretty big deal. I don't remember this being a problem at the last time around, so I don't know why it's such an issue now.
I saw that a couple guys, Jose Altuve and somebody else, got hurt last time, and so insurance, doesn't want to pay. Same for baseball players as I guess for our health insurance, they don't want to pay. So they've come up with a pre-existing condition of being the age 37 or older.
Yeah, I remember there used to be insurance companies that would insure the long-term deals in baseball. So like if your player got hurt for like an entire year, you didn't have to necessarily pay his whole $15 million salary because it was insured. But then the salaries got to the point where I think a lot of insurance companies weren't willing to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the Steven Strasburg contract, was one of the tipping points where it became harder to insure some of these players. So that's unfortunate in this case because the World Baseball Classic is like an opportunity to show these players on a big stage. I was just talking to my son, who's a casual baseball fan. It's certainly not his favorite sport, and he was really excited about the World Baseball Classic, saying like, "Yeah, I want to see this. How good this Dominican team is, and some of these Japanese players that I don't ever get to see." And if some of the best players aren't allowed to play because of insurance reasons, it seems like a silly thing that would prohibit the event from being what it fully can be. I don't know if this is something where Major League Baseball steps in and says and figures out a way to insure these contracts or assures the teams that hey, if a player gets hurt, we'll make you whole. But there needs to be a solution, because it would be, I think, a real shame if, like, the Puerto Rican team, which should be a pretty good team and can contend, I think, for a gold medal, it isn't able to participate because they don't have enough players because of insurance reasons.
Yeah, I remember the last World Baseball Classic, Roki Sasaki broke onto the scene in a big way in the world consciousness of baseball. And so when he became available last offseason, everybody wanted him. And of course the Dodgers got him. But I think that was a big part of why that was such a big deal that the Dodgers got him, was that everybody knew him from the WBC. So yeah, I hope they'll figure this out. The WBC has been really cool, and I'd hate to see it fall apart over something like this, where guys still want to participate, guys are still excited about participating, and they just can't.
Well, yeah, that's the big thing too. Is when this first started, I was like, well, are players really gonna be that excited to participate? And then you see them play for their flag, the Dominican Republic, and the pride they take for representing, the Dominican Republic or Venezuela or whatever, Japan, and they take it super seriously. Way more than you would think. What are essentially a bunch of exhibition games in February should be, or March. Much more seriously than you would think. And so it's really cool to see that kind of intensity. Like, it has a postseason intensity that I think every sport's looking for. And that's why the NBA has that weird in-season tournament. They're trying to contrive some intensity where there isn't any. And baseball kind of struck upon that with the World Baseball Classic. So they really need to figure it out, because this, like you said, this is a great opportunity to showcase some stars and get people to know these faces so that you can market them during the regular season.
Absolutely. And the global stage, in today's world, you look at the NFL, where they've got every team has to play a game in an international setting every year now. Expanding globally is kind of one of the next steps for these major American sports, and there's a craving for baseball outside of America that sometimes dwarfs that inside of America. So to lose out on that would be a real shame. But speaking of the WBC, one of the guys who's going to be participating for Team Italy got a new deal signed since I last spoke, certainly since you and I last spoke. Vinny Pasquantino signed a 2-year contract to buy out his first and second years of arbitration eligibility. He still has that third year, which is the big one, and he doesn't have to go into a room and listen to the team talk about how bad he is. So that's pretty exciting, right, Max?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was his first year of arbitration. He asked for $4.5 million, which is in line with what you would probably expect. The team countered with $4 million, so it's like there's $500,000 of differences. And I did I ran a chart of like all the Royals arbitration cases throughout the years, and this is the smallest difference out of anyone that's ever actually gone to a hearing. It was like 11% difference. Like usually you're looking at 20, 30, 40% of a difference between what the team's offering, what the player is asking for. So it's like, does it really make sense to go to arbitration over this? It's and like you say, this is at a hearing. The team, the player has to make the case. Oh, I'm worth this much. Here are my comps. I'm like this player. He's paid this much. This is why this salary is justified. And the team has to say, well, but actually, you did this. You were hurt in 2023 or 2024. And all these caveats that say why the player is not as good as he thinks he is. And it's it can be an acrimonious process for sure. And he certainly wasn't looking forward to it. So thankfully he gets to avoid it. It's interesting. The Royals are what's called a file and trial team, where once you file for arbitration, supposedly negotiations are done, or at least they're not going to settle. So it's interesting. The exception is if you sign a multi-year deal. So this is a multi-year deal technically. I think that's why it's a 2-year deal, because they're willing to make that exception. But as you say, it does not cover his third year of arbitration. He'll have one more year potentially where he'd go to arbitration, and it doesn't cover any free agency year. So it doesn't buy him an extra year of club control with the Royals. Whether or not they end up doing something like that down the road, they could of course negotiate any kind of extension that they want. But is there an appetite for that with the Royals? considering Vinny will be 31 when he hits free agency, and they've got Jack Caglianone, who's a natural, more natural first baseman than outfielder. We'll see. Probably how Caglianone takes the outfield is going to really have a big factor in whether or not Vinny is signed to a long-term deal, I would think. So good to see Vinny get paid. I mean, certainly he's worth it. I think his breakout season was fantastic this year. I think that's kind of a new level of expectation for him. I think he can be one of the best first basemen in the American League and potential all-star this year. I think he can increase his walk rate and be, even more of a threat this year. So I'm glad to see him avoid arbitration and get paid. And hopefully, he's here and a happy part of that clubhouse for a couple more years.
Yeah, I can't imagine Vinny playing for any other team. I think I've made it pretty clear that Kris Bubic is my favorite current Royal, but I can imagine him playing for another team. Like, I see how that happens. Vinny playing for another team just seems sacrilegious to me. I think in the same way that a lot of people would view Salvador Perez playing for another team would just be, what, how did that happen? So hopefully, from my perspective, hopefully more than a couple of years. You brought up that the Royals are a file and trial team. I do wonder if what happened here was they were getting close on this multi-year deal. I mean, there was a couple weeks in between. And you have to file by a certain date. And I think maybe both sides knew that they were probably going to come to a multi-year agreement, and they just hadn't got there yet, so they had to file. And so there was the negotiation was like, yeah, we're kicking this can down the road a few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's probably likely something like that. Where they, if you're only $500,000 apart, like you're pretty close, and in an arbitration hearing, the panel doesn't. They can't split the baby. It has to be either the Royals win or the player wins. And so it would have been kind of silly to go to a hearing for that. So I suspect you're right. Now, Kris Bubic, you mentioned him. He's the other player that still has an arbitration hearing on the books. He's asking for $6.15 million. The Royals are asking for $5.15 million. I don't know if they're going to come to an agreement before a hearing for them to, because I can see the case being made either way why they would justify their number. The Royals are probably, the Bubic is probably saying, hey, look, last year for 20 starts, I was one of the best pitchers in the American League. The upside's great, you're getting great value next year if I'm healthy. And the Royals are saying, yeah, but you only made 20 starts. Are you going to be healthy? So I can see why they might differ in their numbers, and I can see that absolutely going to a hearing.
Yeah, I just always look at some of these numbers, and I just wonder what's going through everybody's heads. Like you said, the difference between Kris Bubic and the Royals is $1 million, 5.15 or 6.15. Why is it that both sides can't just meet in the middle already? Why that $500,000 doesn't mean anything to the Royals, and it feels like it means probably very little to Kris Bubic in terms of what's going to be his lifetime earnings. I mean, you're already talking about, at a minimum, you're getting $5 million next year. I would like to be paid $5 million next year. You would like to be paid. We'd all like to be paid $5 million next year. So it's always just weird to me. Now, like the Tarek Skubal one is wild, unheard of difference, but that makes sense to me why he wouldn't just meet them somewhere in the middle on that. And I understand why. To a degree, I understand why the Tigers wouldn't want to meet his demands, but also you're gonna, because he's worth that. He's back-to-back Cy Young winner. You're not gonna pay him only $19 million. It's wild to me how arbitration works. Didn't somebody at Royals Review write something about how the arbitration system should go away? Didn't that happen, or am I making that up?
Yeah, I wrote that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think so. Arbitration, it dates back to 1973, before players had free agency, and so at the time this was their only recourse to appeal their salary. Before that, the team said, we're going to offer you $20,000, take it or leave it. You can go get a real job if you don't like that. And so that at least offered them a way to appeal that to an independent party. And that first year, that was a way for Reggie Jackson to get $100,000 from the A's, something he never would have gotten from Charlie Finley. But so it evolved over the years, to apply only to players, before free agency. And I think it served the players very well. I mean, salaries have skyrocketed and have gone up quite a bit. But the acrimonious nature of it, the fact that it still relies heavily on service time and not so much performance. It used to also be heavily weighed on like old school metrics. I think that's changed. I think teams and players are more savvy about explaining some of the advanced metrics with arbitration panels now. But it's still kind of an antiquated process that, a guy like Jonathan India, who's a major league veteran, has a track record of success, but had a bad year. Like, does he deserve $8 million while Vinny Pasquantino, far more productive player, gets half that? I don't know. It depends on how much you value service time over performance. And so I think like a system that funnels more money to players before they hit even the arbitration eligibility. Like the first 3 years can be three of the most productive years of a player's career, and do a more pay for performance model where you're giving players compensation for when they are productive, and not necessarily weighing it so much on service time. I think makes a little more sense to me, because right now you're seeing a market distortion where teams are loading up on pre-free agent, pre-arbitration eligible players because they're cheaper. And that hurts the free agents who are 30 years old and looking for jobs because teams don't want to pay that. So, I think that's the model the owners are pushing, so I can get the skepticism. And certainly the devil's in the details. How much money do you allocate towards anything like that? But I think moving more towards some sort of model that effectively values the player for their worth, what we can objectively call their true worth as a player, I think makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. I can only imagine if at my job I was a rock star, just doing everything that could be asked of me. And it's like, well, it's your first year here, so we're not going to pay you yet. But if you're still good in 5 years, then we'll pay you. That would seem pretty frustrating. So, yeah, I don't have a good segue here. The next item on our list to talk about today is the non-roster invitees for spring training. We could have hit it a while back and missed that stop, so we'll do a quick U-turn here. And this non-roster invitees for spring training. Anybody standing out to you as somebody you're excited about or people should be paying attention to?
Well, I mean, I think the headliners are like the former first-round picks that got invited to camp, so Blake Mitchell, the catcher, one of the top prospects in the system. He invited because they always need catchers. But, he may get in some games against some major league pitching, which will be interesting to see. He did have that wrist injury at the beginning of last year, came back in the second half and put up some great walk numbers, but really didn't hit for any kind of power. Same with the Arizona Fall League performance. I mean, I think there's some good things to get out of his performance, but the loss of power is a little concerning. And it's also pretty... that happens a lot with guys that have wrist injuries. So it's really this year that is the more pivotal year to see if that power returns. So I'll be interested in seeing him. How being around the big leaguers, I think will help. Gavin Cross, I think this is a huge year for him. Like, a guy I was super high on and thought would be in the big leagues in no time, and is just, he's almost 25 now and hasn't really put together even a really good minor league season. This will be a pretty big year for him. He'll be in camp. And then Frank Mazzucato, who was in camp last year, I believe, or at least he got in some big league games. I remember everyone getting excited about his velocity at one point. But, he's another guy that this is a big year for him as well, that needs to put it all together and have a breakout season in the minors. So we'll get to look at some of them. Other than that, you got your typical roster of major league veterans, utility infielders trying to make the team, like Kevin Newman and Josh Rojas, a guy they pursued last year, who could make the team as a bench player. You've got relievers like Hector Neris, Aaron Sanchez, who I forgot. I didn't realize is only 33 years old. He pitched against the Royals in the 2015 ALCS, and apparently he's had a lot of injury issues, but he's a guy that pitched really well in the I think Venezuelan Winter League, and teams are like, okay, he may have something left in the tank as a reliever, and the Royals are going to give him a shot to make the team. So there's some couple guys like that. And then, of course, some of the prospects, though, you want to take a look at. Guys like Carson Roccaforte, who, is put together a really impressive season in the minors last year. He'll be in camp as a non-roster invitee outfielder. Doesn't have a chance of making the team, but it'd be nice to get a look at him, see how he's progressed, and how he can perform against big leaguers. Anyone you really got your eye on? Or maybe one of the guys I listed?
I said this last episode, and then I posted about it on social media. But Carson, I always pronounced it Roccaforte, but Roccaforte. I'll trust
you. Might
your
be right. I don't honestly. I would see it written out. I never see it. Anyone say it.
Somebody hopefully
You're
will
right.
get to hear his name now that he's in big league camp for the first time. But the numbers he put up last year. I just get the vibe that he's the real deal out there. And I know, of course, and I said this last time too, Preston Farr, former Royals review writer, running the newsletter 816 now, really loves him. So that's a guy I'm really staring at. I'm just going to be staring at every at-bat he takes. And then, of course, got to keep our eyes on some guys who are roster invitees like Jack Caglianone and Carter Jensen. See how they do. Do you think any of the non-roster invitees?
One more name, sorry. Just because I love side armors, AJ Causey. I'm really excited about him. A side armor who throws strikes and just flat out dominated the minors last year. I mean, he's a guy that could be up in the big leagues pretty quickly, but he's another guy I really want to see how does he fare against big leaguers.
That was actually my next question was, when you look at this list of non-roster invitees, do any of them stand out to you as, I can really, it feels almost like better than 50-50 odds that this guy could be on the 26-man roster to start the year?
I mean, I think the guys that have the best shot of making the team are like the major league veterans who, Josh Rojas probably has the best shot because he's
until Adam Frazier is inevitably re-signed.
Right. He's kind of like this year's Adam Frazier. He's a guy that the team really pursued, I guess, last offseason. Ended up signing with the White Sox. He had a pretty terrible season at the plate, but he's a guy that has been an okay hitter in the past. Tremendous defender, left-handed bat. I mean, a lot of teams seek that on their bench, so it would make a lot of sense. He plays all over the field. That's the kind of guy that you're like, okay, we'll carry him as a 26th guy on opening day, kind of like the K. Van Biggio role, just a guy that we can plug in anywhere and hit against right-handed bats or right-handed pitchers on occasion. So he probably has the best odds, but it's always good to get a look at some of these younger guys. I know they're probably not, what's working against the younger guys is you want them to get playing time. And this Royals team is pretty set when it comes to regular playing time with their starters. So there's not going to be an opportunity for, one of these younger guys to come up and make the team and really play substantially unless there's an injury.
That's kind of, I guess, the if there is a downside of having a team that you expect to be at least on the fringes of competition, there's not usually a ton of playing time that's not accounted for when you enter spring training. You should have a pretty good idea of who's going to be starting most days. And so, if this was 22, 23, with the way those teams were set up, then maybe Carson Roccaforte or Gavin Cross gets a real look to fill in the outfield. But the Royals have more talent, so those guys are going to have to really show something in the minor leagues and or wait for injuries before they're going to get a shot.
Those 2005 Royals.
This Valentine's Day, celebrate the one you love the most with Hallmark cards at Walgreens. Valentine's Day is the best time to send your favorite person a reminder of just how much they mean to you. A Hallmark card is a super simple and beautiful way to say how grateful you are for the love you two share. Don't forget, Valentine's Day is Saturday, February 14th. Visit Walgreens today to find a Hallmark card that shows just how much you love them. Because love lives here.
You compare prices when shopping for flights, hotels, cars. So why not small business insurance? At Simply Business, we'll show you policies that fit your business and a range of prices to help you save. Who knew buying insurance could be so simple? Visit simplybusiness.com for your free quote today.
had like open tryouts, like, hey, show up, you can make the team.
I kind of remember that. I remember thinking, oh, I wish I was old enough to go do that. I would
Hit
not have.
375 in Arizona, and you could be our starting center fielder.
So speaking of Blake Mitchell, though, he is still showing up on a lot of these top 100 prospect lists, despite the injuries last year. Seren Petro had Keith Law on his podcast, the Kaufman Corner, earlier this week, and he talked about, or maybe it was he had him on his radio show. I don't remember, but he talked about how everyone looks at that Hammett bone injury and says, "Yeah, that saps power for a year." We're not going to read too much into that. We're going to kind of just hold steady with him based on what we were thinking in 24. So he's still on those top 100 prospect lists, but we've got some new guys on the top 100 prospect lists and some movement. You wrote an article for Royals Review, another one because you were just churning them out, man, about all the prospect lists. Anything stand out to you there?
Yeah, Keith's article is pretty interesting in that, I think all these guys have been accused of being Royals haters at some point, but I think Keith Law probably disagreed with the Royals thinking for many years when it came to prospect development, and probably for good reason.
Hate that.
I mean, they weren't doing a very good job of it for a long time. So he was pretty high on the Royals this year. He had 3 Royals on his top 100 list. Mitchell, you mentioned. Who I believe he had, number 56. Carter Jensen, number 10 overall, which is very impressive. I don't think the Royals have had anyone other than Bobby Witt Jr. ranked that high in over a decade. And then he had Kendrys Chorio at number 61. And he wrote, he said the Royals are his prediction for having the biggest jump in farm system rankings this year. If Chorio and David Shields and Sean Gamble and Josh Hammond, their 2 first-round picks from last year, who Law was pretty high on. If they all come out and have solid major league or solid minor league seasons this year, the Royals could certainly jump into like the top half at least. Because a lot of observers still have them among the bottom, third or bottom 6 teams in farm system rankings. And I think that's understandable because it's Carter Jensen, who I think is high on a lot of prospect lists. Chorio's made some lists. Blake Mitchell's made some lists still, despite his lost year. And after that, there's not a lot. There's not a lot of love to Royals prospects. But there are enough intriguing lower-level guys, and I think enough progress being made that people feel like, okay, by a year from now, we could be talking about the Royals in a much different light, where some of the guys from the 2025 draft class are really performing. Michael Lombardi's another name that people are pretty high on, the pitcher out of Tulane. And I think people seem to trust Brian Bridges, the new scouting director, a little bit more than the last administration, the last staff that was overseeing the draft. That he's got a little bit of track record with the Braves, and that he seems to know what he's doing a little bit more. We'll see. I mean, it's definitely a kind of a skeptical crowd of Royals fans, but I think there are some reasons to be optimistic about this farm system, even if they don't necessarily rank super high right now.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think you could be optimistic is that they also have David Shields, who just missed on multiple lists.
Who I like a lot. I mean,
I like him a lot too, and it basically seems to come down to the fact that he doesn't have a lot of velocity, but he's also just 19, or is he just about to turn 20, something like that?
He just turned 19, I think.
So just turned 19. He's got some time to build up some of that strength and get that velocity. It's not like he needs to jump at 10 miles an hour. It's just 2, 3, 4 miles an hour, and he'll be ready to go. So that's another guy to keep an eye out on. And they've had a couple good international free agent signing periods. That we talked about some of those guys, me and Jacob, over the last couple of podcasts where we were doing the position groups, and Heibel, Gonzalez, I forget his last name. I remember Asbel and Heibel. I can't remember their last names.
Is this a guy from this year's signing class?
Yeah, and Heibel was this year, and Asbel was 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Might be and Heibel Gomez and Asbel Gonzalez, something like that.
I struggle with the international classes too.
Well,
But like Walter Castano is supposed to be really great. Moises Marchand. I mean, there's a lot of guys. They've been pretty high in that market for a couple years now.
Yeah, so there's hopefully more good stuff coming that way, and like you said, the last couple of drafts have looked a little bit better in terms of some of those guys they've gotten, where people are pretty excited about them still. So hopefully we'll have some good news when the mid-season rankings come out, and we'll see some upgrades.
And the thing I really like too about Shields and Chorio too, like you talk about they don't have the biggest velocity in the world, not whatever, but they're strike throwers, and I think for a long time the Royals are like velocity. You got to establish your fastball, and the fact that they have two very young pitchers who are throwing strikes, which if you look at a lot of prospects that age, like throwing strikes is one of the hardest things to kind of develop at that age, and they've got it already. So you feel like, and I don't know if that's part of their overall pitching, development process now. I wouldn't surprise me if it was, but to look for guys that can throw strikes and hit their spots, and I think if you have two guys like that that are already doing that at such an age, that really speaks well for the overall process and for their future success.
It does. I do wonder if that might be a quote unquote market inefficiency, as much as there is such a thing in the modern professional baseball landscape, because I don't think the Royals are alone in looking for guys who among the teams that were or still are looking for guys who throw 100 miles per hour, and will teach them how to throw strikes probably. It's not like Josh Staumont, when the Royals brought him along, was unique. The only thing that made him unique was that he actually did hit triple digits. But I think it was Matthew Lamar wrote an article in midseason that MLB needs to look at the rules for hit batters, because it's just become this thing where these guys are throwing the ball as hard as they can and they don't know where it's going, and you want to disincentivize that a little bit. And I think he's onto something, because it's not a lot of fun. It's cool to see 100, 101 pop up on the screen, but after you see that a couple of times, it gets pretty boring to watch him throw ball four, and tonight he's throwing strikes. Oh, it's too straight. They hit it. So having guys who can get some chase, who can throw some strikes, that's much more interesting from a pitching side. And if the Royals are leaning in that direction, I'm not sure everybody else is caught up there yet. Could be something that helps them progress into the future.
And I think fastballs too are losing their effectiveness at the major league level. You're not getting the same whiff rates as you used to, and it's really teams are starting to move more to the breaking stuff. Like, okay, we'll get guys to chase, we'll get guys, we're going to look for that horizontal movement, guys that can really spin it. And so, it may not be, you may not need the guy that throws 100 necessarily. If you can get a guy that already knows how to throw strikes and get him to work on his slider or a sinking fastball or something like that, that could be a lot more effective, I think, at the big league level than a guy that just tries to get by and blowing it past everyone.
Can I interest you in a Noah Cameron, for example?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
His fastball is almost worthless, but he also only throws it about a third of the time. Yeah. When traditionally it's been a pitch you throw more than half the time. Yeah. And he was very effective with that. And so it'll be really interesting, not just as a Royals fan next year to see how he does. This year to see how he does, but as a fan of baseball, if Noah Cameron can continue to pitch like that, and I've argued for a while that if you can get guys off balance, you're better than if you're just throwing heat, because if it's mostly straight, they're gonna, like you said, those whiff rates are coming down. The guys are catching up to those fastballs. Give them something else to think about. So I'm excited to see what he can do and perhaps change a little bit of baseball. That would be cool. So I know I wrote, if time, let's talk about stadium stuff, but let's hit this really quick. Kansas said, the Royals, we're done with them. Clay County said, we're not doing a bidding war with the Royals. So that pretty much just leaves the Royals with kind of one place now, right? That's Jackson County. Or they could move to another metro area. I saw a blog post that said Salt Lake City has made them a tremendous offer.
Yeah, that was interesting. I guess the Salt Lake officials were even asked there. They're like, we haven't talked to the Royals, but we, we'd love a
Oh,
team.
what? It was fake.
Yeah,
Are you? I can't believe. I was sure that was for real.
it was on the internet, so it's of course it's real. Yeah. So the ballpark drama. We're in 2026. Imagine a couple years ago when this started.
Yo,
Saying, oh, it's 2026, and this is still going on.
I did a TV interview where I was like, well, I'm glad at least the Royals feel like they have a plan now in 24.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't gotten to do a TV interview since, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, you're not the only one. I was the one that said, "Oh, yeah, the vote will probably pass. They'll find a way." And boy, I look stupid in that one. Like the voters resoundingly rejected it, and now we're a year and a half later and still don't have an idea of where this team is going to go. So, the Kansas, I don't think the door's completely closed, but it does sound like, I mean, the Royals said they're not considering the Aspira Overland Park site anymore, which great. I mean, I live near there. It would have been a mess, traffic wise. My kids play baseball there now. That would have, the Jewish Community Center there would have been displaced, which is not a good optics. And it doesn't feel like downtown baseball, certainly. So I'm glad that's off the table. Clay County, it sounds, the Clay County Commission came out with a statement that says, like, we don't want to be basically a bargaining chip. And it sounds like they're kind of done, but some of the commissioners in interviews have been like, well, we'll still talk. They missed a deadline to put this before voters in April.
Royals missed a deadline for stadium stuff?
So, they're negotiating a deal. They said, like, if there's a deal to be had with the Royals, it has to be ready by January 8th so we can have a public comment period, research, and all that to be on the April ballot. The Royals did not did not have a proposal ready by then. And so the commission said, we're not going to have a vote in April. They could still have a vote some other time. But one of the commissioners, I think Clay Withington, has been pretty critical of the Royals, and John Sherman in particular, saying, like, you weren't even in the room for negotiations. What are you talking about?
That's not a good look.
Yeah, that sounds like there's some bad blood there. And so that leaves Kansas City, Missouri, I think, as the kind of most likely site selection now. Washington Square Park by Crown Center seems to be where they've zeroed in on. There's some talk that Mayor Quentin Lucas wants to get $500 million allocated from the Port of Kansas City fund to the ballpark without a public vote. The Port of Kansas City, I think they run and I don't know, I've always known they've have a huge fund that they use for development, and I know they have done some development of Berkeley Park and I know there's going to be, and I think the women's soccer stadium was part of that jurisdiction as well. And so they have some money there, but I think some of it comes from the state, and so some of the state lawmakers are like, well, wait a minute, we don't want this money to be necessarily going to a baseball stadium without a vote. And there's going to have to be some sort of state component, I think, state funding component, I would think. But so we'll see. There's a lot of moving parts to this. It sounds like Washington Square Park is probably the top vote right now, top most likely selection. I think East Village could be still on the table, but it doesn't sound like it's I think John Sherman said it's still on the table, but it's certainly Washington Square Park sounds like the one they're really negotiating with the city about.
So you don't think there's any chance that they just go ahead and refurbish Kauffman, knock down Arrowhead, and hang out there?
Yeah, I don't. They've been pretty adamant about not staying there, and I get it because and you say, well, the Chiefs aren't there anymore. Now you can do whatever you want to the stadium and build a district if you want. The problem with that is the metro area is not really in Eastern Jackson County as much as it used to be. Like when I was a kid, we lived in Eastern Jackson County, and that was where a lot of the ball players lived. That's where a lot of the suburban area, the really affluent suburban areas were. And that's changed. I mean, you still have Lee Summit and Blue Springs and some a lot of suburbanites there, but it's really spread out also to the Northland and to Johnson County, certainly. And so it's a lot more spread out, and it makes more sense, I think, to have something a little more centrally located. Mm-hmm. Now, the Chiefs, obviously, they aren't, they're way out in western, Wyandotte County, which is a haul for a lot of people in Missouri, but it's the Chiefs. I mean, you could put them in Topeka, and people will come to games. So it's a little bit different. So you need something that's going to generate revenue, ideally 365, not just 80 days a year. And I don't think they feel like that can happen at the Truman Sports Complex. Now, if they get really desperate, maybe they have to make it work there. I don't know, but it doesn't sound like they really want to stay there. And, I'm a little skeptical of their ballpark reconstruction cost of $1 billion to just redo Kauffman Stadium, but
Just a
it
little.
won't be cheap. Yeah, it won't be cheap to redo it or make it what they want at least. So
I know curing human cancer is incredibly expensive. I can't imagine what curing concrete cancer costs.
yeah, and I get I love the K. I'd love to see it refurbished. It's what the fifth oldest stadium in baseball now,
Something
and
like that. It's
now that
basically historic.
yeah, now that the Oakland Coliseum's out of commission, it's I think just Fenway, Wrigley, Angels Stadium, and Dodger Stadium. I think is it. It's up there, and everyone still thinks it looks great. But I just in this modern day, teams are looking for that Braves model. You have the Battery Park and the restaurants and the hotels and the offices and everything, and the Royals just feel like they need that to compete. They're in the real estate business now. They're not in the baseball business.
Yeah.
They have an executive whose job is to like real estate development now. So, that's what they want, and they feel like downtown Kansas City makes more sense than Truman Sports Complex for that.
Yeah, I'm sure that we've gone over this before. I know I've gone over it before elsewhere, that the whole being in real estate instead of baseball really ticks me off, as far as how all this stuff goes. And the fact that, like, especially the part where the government is worried about and pitches everything to their constituents about, oh, well, it's a baseball team, it's a civic institution, but you're not funding it for the baseball, you're funding it for the billionaire real estate scheme. Every step forward in this way just really rubs me the wrong way. And I don't know what to do about it, unfortunately.
The other interesting thing too is so we have a labor deal, that's expiring this year, and everyone's hunkering down for a lunch stoppage, and the owners want a salary cap, right?
Yeah.
Which I've written, that makes a lot of sense if you do it on a player's terms, in a way that is equitable and can get 50% of revenues to the players. Now the problem is, what's revenue? Like, is it
exactly.
ballpark revenue?
Exactly.
Is it real estate development revenue? Is it all the, everything that comes ancillary to the stadium? And that's going to have to be negotiated if they ever, ever do agree to a cap. And how can owners hide debts, hide revenues into different, vehicles they have, investment vehicles, and can we saddle some of our hotel debt onto the ballpark, onto the baseball team, so that it makes it seem like we're losing money? So that's all good. That just complicates that even further as well.
Yeah, and that their accountants are already working overtime on figuring out how they would handle all that stuff. Are already doing that in order so that they can to pay less in taxes as things stand, and claim these different things for revenue sharing and blah blah blah. So, gosh, just a big ol' mess, and that's why I was going to say that's why I don't spend that much time talking about or thinking about the economics of baseball, but that's the opposite of the truth. I spend way too much time thinking about it because it just drives me nuts. I should spend less time thinking about it. How about Bobby Witt Jr.? I got to think about how he flies through the air catching those ground balls. Right? That'll be better. So I know I said we were going to talk about the 15 most important starting pitchers, but we're already up over 40 minutes here, and I don't want to push us too long. And I really want to save that for Jacob if I can, so I'm probably going to put that off. We'll talk about a little bit of starting pitching stuff here in a minute, but first, I do want to remind everyone that the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, the Royals, for how many years in a row is it now? Do you remember, Max?
5 years in a row now.
5 years in a row, 5th year in a row. They're making it free for you to go to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. They're paying for everyone's entry into the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum for the month of February, Black History Month, which starts today as we're recording this, yesterday as you're probably listening to it. So that remains one of the really cool things that the Royals do. One of the really cool business economics decisions that they do that I really appreciate. I know that one of the ways I've really gotten into the Negro Leagues is through the storylines in MLB The Show. I wish I still lived in Kansas City, because if I ever get back, one of the things I will have to do is go to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, because I've never been there. You've been there, right, Max?
Yeah,
You
I took
can
my
pitch
oldest
this
son
better than
there.
I can.
Yeah, I took my oldest son there a year ago, and he actually seemed to appreciate it quite a bit. It was kind of neat. I've heard that if you go on a certain days, like Bob Kendrick, the president, will be there.
Yeah.
He'll just lead you on a tour, and if I have gotten the chance to listen to him a few times and talk about a master storyteller and just the perfect ambassador for that museum.
He's in the show, by the way. He
which
does
is
all the
great.
narrations for the Negro League stuff in MLB The Show, so they know what's going on.
Yeah, so he's the perfect ambassador. And just tying this back to the stadium stuff, like, it would be really cool if they put the stadium near the Negro League Baseball Museum.
Yeah.
There was Ollie Gates, the entrepreneur, the barbecue restaurant entrepreneur, did suggest putting it in between 18th and Vine and East Crossroads, where I think KCATA has a building. That would be really neat. I haven't heard about that. I think that was on the Royals' original list of like 20 sites they were looking at, and didn't make it very far.
The plan they had that went down when the vote failed, didn't that have like a sky bridge to the museum or something like that?
No, I mean it's too far from like downtown Loop, but it's an area where you could kind of tie. So the Crossroads is like the bar district, bar independent artists. They talked about displacing a lot of that for the stadium. Yeah. If you go a little, further south and east of there, there's still some. It starts to thin out a little bit, and then you get to 18th and Vine, but there's not as much there to displace on the east side of the Crossroads. So I haven't looked at the site like too much, but it does. It would be kind of cool to tie that into the stadium somehow. You do have highway access, so for those that are concerned about that, you could probably build a lot of parking. But that, for whatever reason, that hasn't really gained much traction, unfortunately.
Yeah, the one good thing about the Crossroads location to me was that it was closer, at least, to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, because really, the closer you could put these two things together, like. You make it so that we'll just do a day trip. We'll go hit the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and then we'll go hit Kauffman and watch the game. And that would really set up the NLBM for success.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Not that it's not successful, but the more people we can drive into it, the better everyone is.
Right.
So, yeah, that if you're in Kansas City, you got to go take advantage of this. You got to do it for me, okay? Because I can't go. I'm snowed into the mountains on the East Coast, all right? You got to go for me. So let's finish the show off talking a little bit about the Royals starting pitching. Kind of seems like they're not going to trade any starting pitchers, which I wrote about a few weeks ago, and then I kind of backed off of that when the Mets looked like they might still need a starting pitcher, and then they went and got Freddie Peralta. Maybe they don't need a starting pitcher anymore. I mean, they're already looking at. I was looking at a depth chart. Kodai Senga is looking like he is out of the rotation as things stand in New York right now, so they probably don't need a starting pitcher. So the Royals, who they've got is probably who they've got as far as starting pitchers go. At this point, a week, maybe a little more than a week before spring training even begins, who do you think fills out the top five for the rotation? Max, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's you don't have to give the order if you don't want to, but who's in the top five to start the year, do you think?
I think Cole Reagans is your opening day starter, followed by some combination of Bubic, Lugo, Waka, and Cameron. I think the Royals are going to eventually go to a six-man rotation at some point through the year because a lot of those guys need to have their innings limited, I think. Mm-hmm. Reagans and Bubic are both coming off major injuries. Lugo certainly had a second half swoon, and his second half in 2024 wasn't great either. And then Michael Waka, just at an age where you kind of want to protect him a little bit. And he's never been a workhorse anyway throughout his career. So, and you've got the pitching depth, so you can try to call some of these guys up, a Bailey Falter or Stephen Kolek or Bergert, and give them a spot start here and there. So I think that makes some sense. It's not a bad thing to have pitching depth. I mean, I think it's one of the smartest things I've heard JJ Picola talk about is like he knows you need 9, 10 starting pitchers to get through a season because of attrition. So it's certainly not a bad thing to have this pitching depth. Certainly, you'd like to pull off a trade where you trade one of these guys for the outfielder that can make a difference. But if it's not there, I wouldn't force it. And so far, they haven't made a trade. We'll see. There's still some time, but
there is
spring training right around the corner. And I agree. The Mets made a lot of sense as a possible destination. Now that they have Peralta, probably not so much. Someone asked me this yesterday. The Yankees, could they be interested in Chris Bubich for Jason Dominguez or Spencer Jones, two left fielders?
Are we interested in Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones?
Well,
those are guys that are top prospects, but they haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Dominguez is a guy that seems to know how to draw a walk. His defense, I think, is a little bit concerning, and he hasn't hit for a ton of power yet. But it's certainly a guy that you could at least be a candidate to be at the top of that lineup. And then Spencer Jones will be a little more, I think, speculative since he hasn't done anything at the major league level. A lot of power in the minors, strikes out a ton, though, and his defense, too, I think is supposed to be a little bit of an issue.
Pass.
But I wonder if there's something there because the Yankees do need some pitching, at least until Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon are healthy. And the Yankees have been kind of quiet this offseason, and at least not as active as you would expect a team like that to be. So I don't know. And then I haven't heard his name up this much this offseason, but Lars Nootbaar of the Cardinals, I'd love to get him. I don't know if the Cardinals are doing a full rebuild or if they're just trying to, trade a couple really valuable pieces. But he's a guy that gets on base, not a huge power hitter, but, maybe bringing in the fences helps. But, he's a guy that could also be a guy at the top of the lineup. And I think the Cardinals are probably, if they are rebuilding, looking for prospects. But he's a guy that I would certainly be targeting, I think even more than Brendan Donovan. But, I haven't heard too much about his name coming up at all. So we'll see.
One trade I still keep thinking about would be a 3-team trade between the Royals, the Red Sox, and the Diamondbacks. And the Red Sox could get Marte. The Royals could get Duran. I don't know if the Diamondbacks are competing, though. Are they going to try and compete this year? Then maybe they want Bubich. If they're not going to try and compete this year, maybe it's Noah Cameron. The big question, I guess we were alluding to earlier, I've been willing all offseason to move on from Noah Cameron. He's a local kid. He pitched really good last year. People worry about him regressing. But we also talked about earlier this podcast about, is he actually on the front wave of a new style of pitching that is less fastball dependent, and he's actually going to be fine going forward, and in which case you'd be trading 5 years of a pretty good pitcher, a guy who last year at least looked like a number 3 pitcher in a good rotation, for whatever. Do you think that would would you include Noah Cameron in a trade for a Jarren Duran or a Brendan Donovan or something like that, or Lars Nootbaar even?
I'd probably do it for Duran just because he's got, I think, 3 years left of club control, and so that makes a lot of sense. Whereas Donovan has 2, and Nootbaar, I think, maybe has only one or 2.
Yeah.
So would I do Cameron for Duran? Yeah, I'd probably do that. I don't think teams value. So Bubich and Cameron get mentioned the most by Royals, or Bubich gets mentioned the most by Royals fans, because I think they're most willing to deal him. But I think teams don't value him as much as Royals fans do because of the injury and because it's only 1 year of Bubich.
Right.
And I think Cameron isn't viewed as much as Royals fans do value him because of he doesn't strike out a lot of guys, and I think people are expecting some regression from him. So I think the name that other teams want is Reagan's, which I'm not willing to deal.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, and so that's why I think we're at a standstill where there's not a deal to be made. I'd love to get Jarren Duran, but not at that price.
No,
I don't think they're going to.
This is the thing that I keep saying is, Cole Reagans has been hurt, and so that makes him roughly as valuable as Jarren Duran. But if Cole Reagans is healthy, he gives you something that you can only get from him and like 4 other pitchers,
Right.
Garrett Crochet, Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens, maybe a couple of others, a true ace at the top of your rotation, which is, as Royals fans who were fans in 2014 are supremely aware, a thing that can single-handedly win you the World Series.
Yeah.
You just don't give that up unless you have no choice. Now, if the Royals had a lot of needs that they needed to fill, kind of like the White Sox did when they were trading Chris Sale away, when they were trading Garrett Crochet away, then it would make sense. But they're close enough that you can't afford to give that up. That you just can't.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, if you look at it, like objectively, Duran is a better wins above replacement player. He's been more durable. So I get why the Red Sox are like, yeah, you need to give us like one of the best pitchers in baseball. But from the Royals' perspective, yeah, you're right. There's a scarcity there. How many aces come along, and they credit to them. They got him from the Rangers, and now he's one of the best pitchers in the American League. At his best, he's one of the best in the league, and you just don't find that very often. And if you get into a short series, I think we all know whoever wins the Central this year is probably topping out no more than 90 wins, right?
Yeah.
Unless something dramatic happens. And you're just like, okay, well, what's going to happen? In a short series, they're probably going to lose to, bounced in the first round. But in a short series, Cole Reagans, and then you're facing, if some of these other pitchers step up, Chris Bubich is what he was last year. We've seen it. They beat a much better Orioles team in 2024 because they had the starting pitching that just shut down a great offense.
Yep.
So that pitching is a pretty big deal, and you don't want to give that up. And so I totally get why the Royals are hanging on to Reagans, and I would too. There's no way I would give him up for Jarren Duran.
It's what makes me perfectly fine with keeping Chris Bubich, because he's not quite Cole Reagans, but he's not that far. I mean,
Right.
Even with the injury last year, he was still one of the most valuable pitchers in the American League. He pitched 2/3 of the season, and he's still, I think he was in the top 50. He might have been top 30 in Fangraphs WAR.
I think there's a case over the first 2 months he was the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah.
He was up there in WAR. Like, he was amazing the first couple months.
Yeah, so that could be an absolute game changer if the Royals can get to the playoffs, and I do think. So let me put this to you. I think the Royals have made enough moves to really strongly compete for the AL Central. If they added one more really good bat, a Jarren Duran or a Brendan Donovan. Byron Buxton is another guy that I keep thinking about as the Twins just mutually parted ways with their top executive 2 weeks before spring training. Sure you did. If they added one of those, I think they'd be clear favorites for the Central, but I think they've made enough moves that the Central is absolutely in play for them. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's like the joke in The Simpsons, default, the two sweetest words in the English language. Like, no one else is doing anything except for the White Sox. They've made the best moves in the entire division.
Yeah.
But like like you said, the Twins haven't done anything. They're trying to cut costs. The Tigers, I thought they would be a lot more active, and maybe they put all their chips in getting Alex Bregman, but they've been surprisingly quiet. And then the Guardians, they're always quiet, and then like some random dude from AAA shows up and hits like 300 for them. I don't know how they do it.
The Guardians take me off so bad. That's what I was saying. When we were getting to the playoffs, I was going to be I was rooting for the Tigers so hard at the end of September. I was like, you guys cannot let the Guardians catch you. I don't like the Tigers, but I hate the Guardians.
Yeah, but I think everyone, at this point, everyone sees it as a 3-team race, and all 3 teams, the Guardians, Tigers, and Royals, look like they can win between 82 and 88 games, and it's probably going to come down to like moves made during the middle of the summer. Where and that's I think that's the move JJ is trying to do. Like, I know it's frustrating they haven't done more in the outfield, and I wish they had done more in the outfield, but I feel like the moves aren't there right now. The cards aren't there to be played, and so they made some moves. Isaac Collins was a good pickup. We'll see what Lane Thomas can do. I think they're pinning a lot of hopes on Jack Caglianone, but I think they feel like, okay, if we're in it for the first couple months, we can make a move. We saw how quickly they upgraded the outfield last July without really having to make big moves. Adam Frazier and Randall Grichuk and Mike Yastrzemski was a huge upgrade over what they had, and maybe hopefully they'd have a little bit higher of a base to improve from this year. But I think they feel like, okay, if we can at least tread water or better, by July, then we can start making moves. And maybe our farm system looks better by then, that we feel like we have the depth to trade some guys and not feel like our farm system's depleted, and we can make, possibly even a big move. And so I get taking that stance. I'm glad they're not making a move just to make a move. I know it's frustrating, but I also don't want a front office that panics and says, oh, we got to trade some of our best prospects away to get this guy, and hopefully this will cure everything, and it doesn't. It blows up.
That's a really interesting perspective that I hadn't considered. Is the Royals have set themselves up, I think, this offseason to make it to July much better than they did last year. Because last year they famously went into spring training with MJ Melendez and Hunter Renfroe and said, that's what we got. I don't know. And they were ready to replace them. They had no one to replace them with until we got to the trade deadline, and then Mike Yastrzemski and Adam Frazier changed things for the team. This year, they're kind of starting with guys that are hopefully Adam Frazier and Mike Yastrzemski quality. They're starting the season with those guys in Isaac Collins and Lane Thomas. And man, that if you can, like you said, if you can get to the deadline, and if the Royals can have as good a deadline in 26, I think they had a really good deadline in 25. If they can have the same quality of deadline, but with a few more wins when they reach it, that could get them where they want to go. So that's something I hadn't really considered. Of course, like you said, things aren't done yet. I've been saying for the past month, I think, and David Lesky wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago that the Royals have made significant, interesting moves from between the end of January and the middle of spring training for 3 straight years. Yeah. So there's also the possibility that teams will see Chris Bubich on the mound in spring training and go, okay, yeah, he does look good. He looks fine. We weren't sure because we haven't seen him pitch for half a season. Right. He looks fine now. We'll go ahead and we'll do that deal. So that's something to watch out for. There's still lots of opportunities here, and what the Royals have done by I think raising the floor is what they've done, which is what they did in ahead of 24 that got them to the playoffs. Was they signed a bunch of guys that raised the team floor. Didn't really necessarily do much for the ceiling, but raised the floor. And Isaac Collins and Lane Thomas certainly raised the floor of this team to where it gives them time to look for the opportune moment to strike.
No, that's a good way of putting it. I like that. Raising the floor, definitely. Like the you don't feel like this is a team that's going to like just totally bottom out and lose 90, 95 games.
Yeah.
And, they've got a certain base of talent, and then if like Carter Jensen and Jack Caglianone are what we think they're going to be, like then you can start dreaming a little bit. And you're right. You're right about the spring training too. Like, look around baseball. There's a lot of moves left to be made.
Yeah.
Framber Valdez still unsigned.
Yeah.
Eugenio Suarez still unsigned. There's big free agents still out there. Teams are going to be making moves and trades to kind of, get ready for the season. And so there's still a lot of moves out there to be made. And one team makes a move, that starts a domino effect. So you could still see some big trades between now and the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just go ahead and quick give my starting 5 in the rotation. I think I'll give you the order. I think it goes Reagans, Lugo, because they still believe in him, Bubich, Waka, and Cameron, and that way you don't have all the 3 of your lefties going in a row, even though they're 3 very different lefties, and I don't think it should matter that much. I also don't hate keeping Lugo and Waka apart from each other, because I do feel like those guys are maybe the most similar pair out of the 5 starting pitchers, if that makes sense. I think they both kind of get by with junk and right-handed, whereas Reagans brings that heat, Bubich brings that rising fastball, and Cameron brings those strikes and all that breaking stuff. So I think I don't mind them pitching together as much as I do Lugo and Waka.
Does it concern you at all that Lugo's participating in the World Baseball Classic? Because I think Brady Singer did it last time around, and didn't he have a bad year that year, or didn't he have a bad start? And Lugo, he is at that age where I'd like to protect him a little more. I guess Cole Reagans was asked to participate, but for Team USA, and he declined because he wants to get healthy.
Yeah.
Whereas Lugo didn't have an injury, but he clearly didn't look right the last 2 months, and so, I'm like I said, I'm I'm thrilled about the World Baseball Classic. It'd be cool to see Lugo pitching for Team Puerto Rico, but if they participate.
Yeah.
But it does give me a little concern, like, hey man, take it easy out there.
I don't worry. If I worry about him, it's not because of a comparison to Brady Singer, because I think he's a veteran that knows how to get his body ready for baseball. And I worry that Brady Singer didn't. He was too new to the sport. And I also, if I recall correctly, I don't think Brady got to pitch very much because he was on the loaded Team USA. If Lugo pitches for Team Puerto Rico, they're not as loaded as Team USA. Like, they're talented, but they don't go as deep. So I think he actually gets opportunities to pitch. I know that was a big thing about Bobby Witt Jr. in the last Baseball Classic, was that he went with Team USA and then he didn't get to play very much, and then he didn't have a great year. He should get to play plenty this year.
Yeah. He should be front and center, I would think.
So that's not as much a concern either. So I don't think I'm too worried about Lugo pitching in the World Baseball Classic. If anything, I look forward to seeing him get into some competitive action and see if he looks good. Because, spring training, famously, the numbers are kind of wonky in spring training. This will mean something to him. He'll be trying his hardest. We'll see what it looks like. I mean, if there is a lingering injury issue, then it's going to get exposed. Fortunately, the Royals have depth with guys like Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek, who would not be in the minor leagues on probably at least 20 other major league teams. They would be in the starting rotation to start the year, and we don't think they're going to be. Do you think they're going to be in the minor leagues stretched out, or do you think they might be in the bullpen?
The bullpen seems like it's, I'm not saying they have all their roles filled, but there's not as many spots as you would think there.
Yeah.
And also, like, Bailey Falter doesn't have options, so you kind of have to carry him, I think.
But
what's that?
I don't think Bailey. I think Bailey Falter. I think there's always that rash of injuries as guys start getting ramped up, and I think Bailey Falter gets sent to somebody else.
Yeah. So, I mean, Berger. I mean, I guess both of them have some experience doing both relieving and starting, so they should be flexible enough to do that. But I don't know. Maybe I think you kind of want to keep one of them at least on a regular rotation in Omaha just to be ready. Okay, because that happens a lot in April. It seems like we need a guy to come up right away because someone injured their fingernail or something. So, I think I can see them in the minors, just keeping them stretched out to be used because they'll be the first one up. I think when you need a starter.
Man, that would be so frustrating to be as talented as those two guys are. Kolek was maybe pitching above his head a little bit in September for the Royals, but to have had the success that they had at the end of the year and then to not be able to start the year on the big league roster, I feel like that's got to be frustrating. I do have concerns about Bergert's health with that forearm injury. The Royals haven't signaled any kind of concern, so that tempers it a bit. But I've also complained in the past that I don't know that the Royals always take injuries as seriously as I think they should. So it'll be interesting. He's a guy I will definitely be watching in spring training to see, does he look like he's healthy and he's going to be good to go? Because he's got to be the first guy into the rotation if he's not starting the year in the rotation with what he flashed before he went down with the injury at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that's really what you're looking at spring training is just health of pitchers, especially just like, do they look like they are ready to go? Like, is there any kind of ill signs? Is the velocity looking okay? I think we've gone over this before, but the actual results don't matter that much, but we want to see how do they look? What's their process? Are they ramping up for the season? He's a guy I definitely keep an eye on because a little bit of injury toward the end of the season last year, and they're going to need him, I think, at some point, certainly probably sooner rather than later. So,
yep. All right. So I think that's going to cover us for today on the Royals Rundown. You got a Royals review for us, Max?
I should have had this ready.
I can go while you're thinking if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh gosh, I say that and then I completely lose. Okay, so I don't think this is what I was going to review, but I'm going to throw it out there. I've been playing this game. Actually, just got the Platinum Trophy for it. House Flipper 2 on my PlayStation. So it's highly recommended if you go search the Reddits and subreddits and stuff for people who like Power Wash Simulator, which I love Power Wash Simulator. I've played through that one multiple times. I played through Power Wash Simulator 2. I was looking for something with a similar vibe. And so I came across this House Flipper 2, and I wasn't sure about it. I was like, man, I want to just do stuff. I don't want to have to decorate and think about feng shui or whatever. And so I was not sure about it, but on my PS Plus membership, they gave me a 1-hour trial to just play the game. So I jumped in there and I played it for an hour, and I'm like, oh, like I don't have to properly decorate. I just have to buy, like, it'll tell me, buy 3 paintings and put them in this room and clean up this mess over here and do this thing and do that thing. And it gives you a list of tasks to follow, kind of like Power Wash Simulator. And you just do those things and you're good. And you can sit there and spend some time fussing around and making sure everything looks pretty. And sometimes I do that. And other times you can just pile up all 7 chairs up against the wall and say, yep, I bought you your 7 chairs that you asked for your decoration for this room. Good luck. You can organize them when you move in. So I've had a lot of fun with this game. Like I said, I got the Platinum Trophy. I'm thinking about buying the first one. And I know they've also got a remake coming of both the first 2 in a bundle. So looking forward to doing more house flipping, I guess.
All right, I got one.
There you go.
I did a lot of reading over the holidays, and I came across this book by Jason Pargin called "I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom." Jason Pargin wrote the book that became the movie John Dies at the End.
Okay.
And I think he was a prolific internet kind of writer for a while.
Yeah, he was on Cracked.
Yeah. And I came across him because he's pretty prolific on Instagram Reels.
Okay.
And talking about a wide variety of subjects, but he was promoting his book, of course. And so I'm like, okay, I didn't know he's an author. It's a really fantastic book. It's kind of like it's about a girl who recruits a young man to help her cross the country with a mysterious black box of doom. And it has kind of an 80s caper feel to it, but it has a lot to say, I think, about social media, disinformation, influencers, and a host of other ailments that kind of plague society right now. And so it goes a lot deeper than I think than you would expect, but it's still funny, and I think the characters seem kind of authentic, even if they are kind of a stand-in for different kinds of problems with modern technology. So I'd recommend it. It's Jason Pargin's I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom.
I'm going to check that out. I'm going to, because I love John Dies at the End. Have you read John Dies at the End?
That's next on my list. So I was like, well, if I like that, I'm going to try John Dies. And I believe, is it a trilogy or like it's part of a series?
There are at least 3 books in that series. Okay. I don't remember if it went beyond that. I know I read the first 3. And the first, I remember I loved the first one. I don't remember, I didn't hate the second and third one. I don't remember how much I liked them, but I remember I loved the first one. The first one actually got adapted into a movie, which was very different, but also had a very similar vibe. If you are interested in the movie John Dies at the End, I would absolutely recommend reading the book first, because I do think you can get lost watching the movie if you don't already know what's happening.
Interesting. Okay, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah. He had another book that he wrote that I really loved too, and I can't remember the name of it right now.
Yeah, me too. I think that got made into a movie too, and I'm blanking on what it was. But
I gotta go back and reread all those, because they're obviously not standing out in my memory enough anymore, and I loved them.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say on his reels about, society, but also just about screenwriting and movies these days. And so I'd recommend the follow as well.
Yeah, I fell into it because I used to read Cracked on the Cracked.com constantly back in the day, and he was the lead editor there, I think. But yeah, so that's give me that name of that book one more time, because I got to go look it up.
Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom.
Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom. I'm more excited about your recommendation than mine now, so congratulations. Thank you so much for joining me, Max. Filling in on this snowy Sunday. Is it snowy there?
There's tons of snow. It looks like Severance every day. There's snow on the ground, but luckily it hasn't snowed in about 2 weeks. So
okay,
I think but I think we're supposed to get some more this week. So
good luck.
And this week is Truck Day, right? I believe the trucks take off Arizona, so at least there's that to look forward to. But soon we'll see pictures of players doing calisthenics in Arizona soon, so that's something to look forward to.
Yes, we'll try to just feel the warmth through our computer screens.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all the hard work you do at Royals Review that makes the writing and the podcast possible. Lots of good stuff over there, of course. If you're listening to us on any of your podcast platforms of choice, please go check out royalsreview.com. And until next time, go Royals!
When you run a business, there are a lot of boxes to check.
Let's see. Payroll? Check. Inventory? Check. Insurance?
Well, good thing Simply Business makes getting small business insurance fast and easy. Just answer a few questions, review your quotes, and get covered in under 10 minutes, all online. It's that simple. Check insurance off your list at simplybusiness.com.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.